everybody. It's Dave here, Darren over there. We're your happy two old bloggers. We've been sitting here just talking about how happy we were going to bed last night, and today waking up knowing that we've got us a team this year, and it's absolutely wonderful. And we're going to talk about it. First theme is going to be we're going to discuss that game that made us all that happy. Second theme, we're going to go into the running game a bit. I wish that was a little bit more polished last night, but you can't be beggars and choosers on everything, and we'll get into why, but maybe because we didn't see most of the first string running game, but we'll find out. And thirdly, we're going to get into this week in Vikings land. We had a trade. We've got Stefan Gilmore heading to town. All sorts of things going on. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And welcome back again, everyone. I appreciate you showing up to listen to us pontificate on your Minnesota Vikings. We have Miss Mary, Davey, Steven. I see Raymond, John, Delton's in the house. Travis is here. Steven's here, Dan's here, Ant's here. Everybody is here. So it's time to get started. But first, Darren, how are things in the Great White North?
Pretty smoky today, Dave. I'm not sure where the smoke's coming from, but otherwise, awesome. Pontificate, using the fancy words today, Dave. I like it.
There's Aaron. Hello, Aaron. Welcome to the show. And Mr. Bob Swede. Hi, Bob. And Alan is also with us today, and that's freaking rocks. Love to have you guys here. Barber's in the house as well. Good. So, this is fantastic. Well, we should get started then, because there is a lot to talk about. First, theme one. And with theme one, we're going to talk about the game.
That's right, Dave. The long national nightmare or international nightmare is over. Football started yesterday. Vikings football started, even if it wasn't a real game. And Vikings win. 24-23. First time since 2019 they won a preseason game. Who cares? We do, Dave. We care a lot. But as in all preseason games, I know a lot of folks who were here were listening to us yesterday when you ran the at the 2-minute warning show with Tyler Fornes joined us as well. Afternoon, Dr. Proto. Glad to see you. Davey Chains in the house. All kinds of thanks everybody for watching. But yeah, going to recap. So we might be going on over old ground for some of you, but I'm sure everybody's pretty pumped about yesterday anyway, and they'll be and we won't mind talking about it again. So. As in any preseason game, Dave, some good, some bad, but I think overall, more good than bad. And the good, I think, was more important than the bad, for sure. And the first thing we're going to talk about, everybody wanted to see how the Vikings quarterbacks, particularly Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, were going to do. And the results, I think, were very, very favorable on both counts. Sam Darnold only played the one series. I think he went 6 for 11, something like that. But he looked composed, confident. We saw that arm talent that we've been hearing about in training camp. He showed an ability to throw with nice touch and ball placement. Just arcing the ball just over that dropping linebacker on a couple of occasions, just where the ball needed to be. Got us to I think it was the 4-yard line or the 2-yard line. Things kind of stalled there. They tried it on 4th and 2. He threw a heater to Jalen Naylor in the end zone. Tight coverage. tough pass to catch. Nato didn't come down with it, but a successful first drive for Darnold, and he looked like that's all the work he got, but he looked really good. So happy about that. But J.J. McCarthy was really, I think, what everybody wanted to see. How would he react to his first NFL snaps in a live game, even if it was preseason? And again, I think he looked pretty good out there, Dave. We saw he looked calm, confident, looked like he knew what he was doing. He got the Vikings in and out of the huddle quickly. There was no timing issues, no issues with no false starts, no delay of games, something that's quite common in preseason with rookies when the timing isn't down. That went off very smoothly.
And Aaron says, nice to see a good pocket presence and mobility. And I would count that for both quarterbacks. But yes.
For sure. Yes, I was going to say, he showed, I think he showed he put really good zip on a number of his 11 completions. You saw that really very good arm strength that we've been hearing about against in training camp. And that wasn't the thing that J.J. McCarthy got the most kudos for coming out of Michigan. But if you're worried about his arm strength and whether he can fit the ball into tight windows, yesterday showed that he can do that. There are no issues there. The 2 touchdown passes he had, that's awesome. Yes, Tristan Jackson and Trent Sherfield were wide open, but J.J. McCarthy hit them in stride. Beautiful arc on the balls. Wasn't underthrown, wasn't overthrown. Right where it needed to be. Beautiful. Now, and we saw Aaron talked about his pocket presence. We saw him step up in the pocket a few times when he had to create himself a little bit of extra time, better passing lanes, had a couple of nice scrambles. One, he picked up a first down on, I think, a 3rd and 8. That's great to see. That's something that Kirk Cousins would not be able to do. So lots of good stuff. I think the Vikings only had, 1 3-and-out with him running it. He didn't take a sack. Really very few negative plays. That's very good to see. The offense was functioning very well, even though he's not with the ones for the most part. That's all great stuff. Some things that weren't so great. The interception was, I think that was you don't like to see that, but he threw the ball behind Tristan Jackson, and I think he gets away with those throws at NCAA. He's not going to get away with those at the NFL level, and he will learn that. I think there's a couple of instances couple of screens where he threw a bullet when he didn't need to with bad footwork. That wasn't great. He missed on an easy screen that really it should be a throw you should make with your eyes closed. I think he held on to the ball a little bit too long in some cases, which led to pass breakups. But I think overall, hey, 11 for 21, I think it was, 180 yards, 2 touchdown passes, brought the Vikings back when they were down 20-7. I think way more good than bad with J.J. McCarthy. And this was the best preseason performance by a rookie quarterback I think I've ever seen for the Vikings. So, and now granted, a lot of those quarterbacks were day 3 picks. They weren't the number 10 overall pick, but very, very encouraged by what I saw by J.J. McCarthy yesterday. And I think the Vikings are very encouraged, and all Vikings fans should be very encouraged. You don't want to go too crazy and overreact with what you saw. It's not a real NFL game. He wasn't playing against the ones, but it wasn't a complete flop like we're watching Kellen Mond out there. And I'll take that 7 days out of 7.
I will too. And he had a QB rating of, I think it was 116 point something. It was absolutely, he put to rest all doubts that he doesn't have the tools necessary to take this job, because he was making the long throws. He was making some of the short throws. He was making correct decisions, had good pocket presence, all this. Now, what I found interesting when they interviewed him after the fact was that he said the interception is what got his nerves to stop. He was no longer nervous after that. And it showed. He wasn't. And I love the fact that you had an interception and then he suddenly starts playing even better.
Yes.
Unlike at the beginning of game having an interception and then turtling up for the rest of the game because nothing's going the way he wants it to. He made it go the way he wanted it to. And I think that's just I mean, he had some rookie stuff. We talked about it last night. Some of the footwork, some of the throwing, timing, sort of things like that. But he showed you he's got the skills. He's a rough chunk of gem right now. And KOC and his crew are going to sit there and polish it over the next few weeks. And he should be getting nothing but better and better. And I can't wait. It's got us all excited. We have not seen this in a long, long time. And I can't wait with the young man. I thought he did great. And I am so happy for the team. Now, do I expect him to start week 1? Do I expect him to get some start this year? Yes. But this is all setting up for next year. And the fact that he's doing so well now, I saw comparisons to him and Teddy on their first preseason games, and it's night and day. He's so much better. And the fact that we have this should have fans excited because I can't wait. And you got to remember, he's throwing those stats with Tristan Jackson and Trent Sherfield. And yes, they were wide open, and you hit the wide open receiver, and he did. There's been times when quarterbacks don't hit the wide open receiver, including the previous one. So I love it. I absolutely love what we saw yesterday, knowing that it's going to do nothing but get better.
It should. I think it's Tico 15 had just said about you got the comment down there. JJ has all the skills and more importantly all the intangibles, and we knew we've been seeing the intangibles all training camp and OTAs and all of that with the way that he handles himself during practice, what the beat writers have been saying about his interactions with the teammates, with the fans, and how he presents himself at press conferences. It's when I see JJ McCarthy, just looks like a born leader. And the way he talks at press conferences, there's guys that are polished and look good at the podium, but don't say a whole lot and don't come off all that genuine. That is not the way JJ McCarthy comes off on press conferences. He gives thoughtful answers that make sense to a fan who didn't grow up playing the game, and make sense to those who did grow up playing the game. And he answers the questions honestly and intelligently, and just doesn't throw out cliches and that sort of thing. So I like what I've seen from JJ McCarthy off the field, and yesterday I really liked what I saw on the field, which is very important. Now, how about the other number 1 draft pick for the Vikings? How did he look? Well, Dallas Turner got a sack. He had a pressure as well. Didn't get home there. There was another on the throw. Minshew threw down the left sideline for a big gainer. Turner was closing in on him too. He just ran out of a bit of time. But again, I didn't, as I said last night, I didn't analyze like how he did against the run. Was he holding his edge well or anything like that? First and foremost, Dallas Turner is here to sack quarterbacks and put pressure on quarterbacks. And in the time he was out there yesterday, he did that in his first preseason game. And if you look at the all 22 on his sack, nothing fancy, but he beat Andrus Peat, I think a guy who's made the Pro Bowl multiple times, 30 years old, was playing left tackle at the time, just beat him with a speed rush wide. And then when he got by Peat, he like went parallel to the quarterback, like just bent it off, just like I think you're supposed to do. And it looked effortless and closed in on it. So if that's the kind of stuff, he's going to have to vary his pass rush skills and his moves. And he's doing that. And we know that he's capable of, but Dallas Turner looked good yesterday. Also looking good as advertised and mentioned earlier. I think Aaron may have talked about it. Jalen Naylor was wide open all the time, pretty much. And as good as he's looked in training camp, the beat writers have said he looked just as good yesterday. I would say, again, we talked about it last night, but if he's not your leading guy for the number 3 wide receiver role right now, then I don't know what the coaches are looking at. But I think that he is. Somebody mentioned that Tristan Jackson looked better than Jalen Nailor yesterday. I wouldn't agree with that, but that's not to say that Tristan Jackson didn't look well. Again, 4 catches, 100 yards. The one TD catches J.J. McCarthy's first professional touchdown pass in a game. I don't know. One preseason game, there's still some time to go, but I would say just on the way he played yesterday, Tristan Jackson locks up a roster spot with the Vikings. He will be definitely on the team. And with the play of Naylor and Tristan Jackson, and we know what Brandon Powell brings to the table, I think. He's been a vet. He's been around for a number of years. But I don't think if Tristan Jackson, if Jalen Naylor can stay healthy, that's a big if, but if he can do it, if Tristan Jackson continues to play like this with the confidence that he's got, and he's got a connection with J.J. McCarthy already, you can see that the two of them have a good chemistry. They know where each other is going to be. I think that the Vikings don't. Earlier, we were wondering, do they need to bring in a veteran to beef up the wide receiver room? What you saw yesterday would suggest that maybe they don't, and probably they don't. So I think that's good. Turning to the defense, Dave, I think the big round bellies, Levi Drake Rodriguez, got lots of PT yesterday. He's listed at 6'4". I don't think he's even 6'2", but but we saw that nonstop motor that we've been hearing about. He got a sack, a bit of a free run, but it was effort that got him that. He got a pass breakup. Hey, pretty good first time for a guy from Texas A&M Commerce, who a 7th round draft pick who I had never heard of when we drafted him. I had to look all over the internet to figure out who this kid was. But
you weren't the only one.
But hey, the Vikings saw something in him back then, and he showed up yesterday. Bo Richter. Now, here was Gabe Murphy was the undrafted edge rusher I was most interested in seeing. He ended up not playing yesterday because he got hurt. We don't know what the issue was, but Bo Richter got in there and 6 tackles, 4 unassisted. He got a sack, 2 tackles for loss. Now, one of them was a fumbled snap, and he just touched the guy. But anyway,
it works.
It works. And he had a nice tackle on, I think you're showing it there, on the long kickoff return that could have went longer if he didn't make the tackle. So much like Tristan Jackson, I don't know if you can make the team on one preseason performance, but Richter, hey man, he's going to have to shit the bed something bad in the next couple of weeks to not make the team, I think, because he looked really good yesterday against the competition he was facing. And he was bigger than I anticipated. So
yeah, it sort of looks like Brian Robeson.
Yeah, I thought he looked kind of like Brian Robeson, at least physically anyway. So really encouraged that what he did. Going to be excited to see him see what he can do over the next couple of preseason games. So that was all good. As far as players who didn't play well, Jaron Hall, got to mention him. I didn't think he looked. I thought he played pretty poorly yesterday. Held on to the ball too long a bunch of times except for the final drive when absolutely had no choice. He was throwing, looked like check down. Ball placement wasn't very good. Had 3 passes batted at the line of scrimmage. We know at 6 feet tall, that's an issue for him, but it really was an issue yesterday. Didn't look very decisive. Pete Burchett during the telecast said that he commented too. He said Hall's not playing very well. He has to stand out in these instances to be worthy of a roster spot, and we did not see that yesterday. He's going to really have to pick it up to be worthy of a roster spot or even a practice squad spot for the Vikings or anybody else in the NFL, really. A couple other things. I think
a lot of it get to come from behind win, though.
He did, and he did play better in that last drive than he did in the previous, I think, 4 drives that he had. There's no question about that. He kind of got bailed out on one, and Keel Harry made a hell of a catch on that drive to kind of bail the Vikings out a bit, but really not a good performance for Hall. Special teams was spotty, block kick, looked like Rijkaard hit it too flat. The interior got busted and led to all kinds of interior pressure, which resulted in them getting close to Rijkaard and getting hands up there and blocking it. They gave up that long punt return to Vegas. So some things not so great there. I think the run defense, I believe it was mentioned earlier by somebody. When you look at the stats, the Raiders only averaged 3.2 yards per carry during the game. But in the first half, when they had their starters, they seemed to really, they ran the ball quite well. I looked at almost every running play. It was kind of like, that should be a 2-yard gain. It had turned into a 4-yard gain. That should be a 3-yard gain. It had turned into a 5-yard gain. So not the greatest run defense. I think, hopefully they clean that up. We know that Brian Flores wasn't showing the Raiders very much. Probably a lot of vanilla defense, but a bit concerning. I forgot to mention Kene Nwangwu. We've always been saying, what could he do if he got more touches? Well, we saw that 48-yard run. There was some big holes to run through, but you saw when he got open space, when he hit the second level, nobody was catching him. And
he's the fastest guy on the team, supposedly.
Fastest guy on the team. So, there's some good, there's some bad, but I think the most important good was the play of Darnold and especially J.J. McCarthy, and they looked really good, and that outweighs run defense, special teams, spottiness. In my mind, it's way more important that they played the way they played than seeing the run defense struggle, particularly when our twos were playing Las Vegas as ones. I don't know, Dave, but your thoughts on, happy to, chime in on what kind of you thought of the preseason game and who may have stood out or not stood out to you.
Oh, you did a great job of breaking it down. I want to see more Levi Drake Rodriguez, and I still haven't watched all 22 yet. I am planning on it because I want to look at the big round bellies and how they played. I did find it interesting that Rouse and Juergens had the most snaps out of yesterday's game. They were up close to 53, I think, out of a maximum like 60 some odd. I want to look at those guys. That I'm just so happy what we saw with J.J. McCarthy, because everything starts with the quarterback. When we get into pre-games during week one, the first thing I look at is quarterback versus quarterback, and that covers 80% of who's going to win the game. And the fact that we look like we now have our future, I think is great. And we got Sam Darnold up on the screen right now. I think Sam Darnold's played well for that first drive. That's a good thing too. It gives time for the polishing of J.J. McCarthy and hopefully improves Sam Darnold's career. And everything turns out to be bliss and wonderful. And hopefully we destroy everybody in the division. I think it's a good thing. And I've looked at some of the stats of the other rookie quarterbacks over the weekend, and I think ours had the best weekend. So that's, I'm a little biased, but I think that's cool. And I think overall, other than special teams has some things to work on. As I already mentioned, that it was a good game. It was the mistakes that were made can be learned from. But when it came down to it, they won, first time since 2019, which is good. We forgot to mention the standout rookies, all across the board. There was a bunch of them that did well, including Will Rijkaard, who hit the game winner. I was hoping that would be a little bit of a longer kick to see him do that, but that's okay. He can take chip shots and win games for us. I'll take it.
Still got to hit him.
Yep. And so I'm pumped out of yesterday's game. Usually I'm not pumped out of a preseason game. And that's what I found different this season. I'm not sitting there trying to dissect everything. I'm like, I've got a good feeling. And it's been so long since, it seems like it's been so long since we've had that. It's great. Hugh Hall, he looked nervous for some reason. He didn't even look that bad last year. So I'm curious what happens with him. But we'll find out. That'll come in the future. It's nothing to worry about. He's like the fourth stringer on the 3-quarterback team, so we don't have to worry.
Completion percentage was sub 50% yesterday for Hall, so that's clearly not NFL up to snuff for the NFL, where they're looking for 65% or better at a minimum.
Too Evil wants us to trade for Wentz. Thank you, Too Evil. It's his running stick. I love it.
The question earlier about whether we, I don't know who it was, about whether we keep Mullins or not. Certainly, I think if we talked about it last week, if Hall does not show that he has progressed and that you could put him in a game and he could run the offense and move the team and score some points, then I think Kevin O'Connell does have to consider keeping Nick Mullins in case there's an injury to Darnold or McCarthy during the season. You don't want to be Jaron Hall to be your one snap away to being in the game if he just looks like he is hopeless and not
right. You don't want that.
You don't want that.
I agree. So we'll find out. But I'm like I said, I'm still smiling from yesterday. That's what I thought about that football game. It was good. Everybody looked good, happy for it. So, well, that brings us to the end of theme 1, talking about the game, and we'll talk more and more about that as the week goes on. I guarantee that, because that's going to be topic number 1 for Tyler Fornes on the Real Forno on the Monday show as well. Now on to theme 2. Save the running game. Save the whales, save the trees, save the running game.
Yes, Dave. Kevin O'Connell, since he's been head coach, has done some good things with this team. But what's been pretty consistent in 2022 and 2023 is that he has not been able to get a productive running game going with the Vikings. And too often he's abandoned the run pretty quickly because it hasn't been working very well. And, it's had to be pass, and pass again. We've heard, though, that he's looking to change that this year, looking to, as he's been saying, commit to the running game. And that makes sense. And it'd be great if he could commit and get a productive running game going, because despite all the great things we just said about how great J.J. McCarthy looked and how good we felt Sam Darnold looked in the one drive he had, these are still two guys. J.J. McCarthy is a rookie, never played in an NFL game yet, no track record as a pro quarterback. We don't know what he's going to do in an NFL game. Is he going to be great? Is he not going to be great? Things are looking positive on that end, but still nothing's guaranteed. And then Sam Darnold, everybody knows his track record in the NFL has been very poor. Those guys could use a productive running game to lean on to get them settled, and even when times when they're struggling throwing the ball. But it's easy to say at this point in the year, I'm going to commit to the running game. It's harder to do in the game when you've had two running plays on your first drive, and one got you a 1-yard gain and the other got you a 3-yard loss, which we saw all the time in 2022 and 2023 with the Vikings running game. So, hey, if the Vikings are going to commit to the running game, if they're going to get a more productive running game than they've had in previous years with KOC as our head coach, how might that happen? What are the factors or the main factors that could lead that to happening or make us hope that it could happen? Well, I think number 1 is we have replaced Alexander Mattison with former Packer Aaron Jones. Last year, Alexander Mattison was our number 1 guy. A lot of us had concerns about that from day one, but he was the least productive and least explosive starting running back in the NFL last year, or at least one of the least explosive and least productive in the NFL. And the Vikings realized they made a mistake handing the keys to number 1 in running back position to him. They released him, waived him, and they picked up the former Packer Aaron Jones. And so that in itself could be a huge difference maker and big factor for the Vikings in having a productive running game in 2024, because Aaron Jones, even though he's 29 right now, he's going to turn 30 in December. That's at an age where most running backs have lost a step or three. Aaron Jones has not shown that. He didn't show it last year. Yes, he did miss some games with injuries. He played 11 games, and so he missed 6. But he ran for 600 and well over 600 yards in those 11 games, and they really didn't use him a lot in the early games. And he had 5 straight 100-yard games to end the season, including 2 in the playoffs. Averaged 4.6 yards per carry. For his career in 7 years, he has averaged 5 yards per carry as a running back. That is great. Only the lowest he's ever had is 4.6. That's happened twice. He's also, I think, a guy who's got much better vision than Alexander Mattison has as a running back. His ability to see creases and spot little holes where you might not, from the naked eye, see them is miles better than what Alexander Mattison has. So right there, number one, having Aaron Jones right now as your number one running back for the Vikings in 2024, even if the run blocking doesn't improve compared to last year, the fact that you've got him to hand the ball off to the majority of the time instead of Alexander Mattison, that's going to lead to better runs and I think more consistent, productive runs. And hey, you've got, when he's going to be out of the game and needs a breather, we've got Ty Chandler as a number 2 guy, and he has shown that he can get the job done when given the opportunity. So those are 2 guys, Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler, your number 1 and number 2, explosive, big play threats. The Vikings running game has got to be better with those 2 getting the bulk of the carries compared to Alexander Mattison last year, and then a bit of Cam Akers. And then late in the year, when the running game actually looked its best, it was when Ty Chandler was getting the majority of the carries when Mattison was out with an injury. So that's number 1. Number 2, what could lead to a better running game? Kevin O'Connell's talked about having he's looking for a more physical, nastier, tougher offensive line. That's the reason some of us think that the Vikings have decided that Blake Brandel is going to be the starting left guard instead of Dalton Reisner, because he's a tougher, meaner, nastier, more physical player than Reisner is. Well, and we were hearing that Garrett Bradbury is showing up beefier than he has in the past. I think we heard that a couple of years ago too. It didn't seem to change things too much, but does a heavier Garrett Bradbury mean that he'll be able to push guys and be better anchor on running plays and move guys where he hasn't been able to do that in the past? We'll see. But again, him getting beefier shows that he's looking to get more physical as well. And you already got Christian Darrisaw, who's a beast physically. You don't hear him having a reputation for being nasty, but this guy obliterates players on running plays. Like, he tosses them out of the frame on all 22 regularly. And Ed Ingram's got a nasty streak too when he's on. Brian O'Neill is Brian O'Neill solid. So you couple bringing Blake Brandel in there, a little bit heavier Garrett Bradbury, which hope will make him more powerful, and you've got Darrisaw and Ingram, who, if he continues to improve his play like he did in year 2 compared to his rookie year, and you've got O'Neill on the right side, well, you could have a tougher, meaner, more physical offensive line that will be be able to move piles, create more space, dictate the play to the defensive line, and lead to a more productive running game. So that's a second factor that could help. The third one is, go ahead, Dave.
I think that's exactly what KOC wants. I think that's why he's shifting to a more power gap style of running and a little bit less zone, is to engender more of that nastiness. Mm-hmm. Because instead of, all right, I'm going to block in this direction and block who's ever in the hole, it's, I'm going to go block this dude and I'm going to knock his head off. There's a mentality change on the O-line and the different blocking styles. And I think that's what Kevin is trying to do to increase our make our running game a lot better. And I think it's going to work.
Mm-hmm. I think a third factor to watch out for that may lead to a more effective running game is something that Alec Lewis from The Athletic, the New York Times, wrote about this week, where he talked about the pistol formation and how the pistol formation, which is, if you don't know exactly what that's about, that's where you've got the quarterback in a shotgun, but he's only 4 yards behind the center compared to 7 in a traditional shotgun. And also in the pistol, the running back is 2 or 3 yards behind the quarterback. Whereas in the shotgun formation, the running back is either to the left or to the right of the quarterback. So Lewis talked about how the Los Angeles Rams, and Sean McVay is one of Kevin O'Connell's mentors, but the Rams transformed their running game last year when they went to use the pistol formation on a large number of their snaps. And that running game helped really move the offense and helped propel the team, along with a lot of defensive improvement, to what looked like they had no chance to make the playoffs, to them actually making the playoffs last year. A lot. And so Lewis talked about how the Vikings ran the pistol last year on a handful of plays. Like he brought up 2 in his article in particular. There may have been a few more, but he mentioned that on the rare times that they used the pistol, the Vikings had productive runs, whereas we know when they ran regular, they did not. So what he's thinking is that Kevin O'Connell noticed, with his mentor Sean McVay having so much success with the pistol last year, Kevin O'Connell has noticed that, and he is expecting that the Vikings are going to use the pistol formation a lot more this year to try to unlock something extra, something better from their running game. And what makes really, in this article that Lewis wrote, what really, one of the things that's really helpful about the pistol is that, unlike the shotgun, it creates uncertainty in the defense of whether you're going to pass or run, because the running back is still behind the quarterback. With the shotgun, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to pass the ball. So using the pistol still allows the quarterback to be in a shotgun formation, but gives them the option, or it creates more uncertainty amongst the defense whether the Vikings are going to pass or run. And Lewis feels that if the Vikings try this more in 2024, again, with the running backs that they have in Ty Chandler and Aaron Jones now, and the offensive line that they have, and the quarterbacks that they have, that it will lead to a more productive Vikings running game than we have seen the previous 2 years under Kevin O'Connell. So nothing guaranteed in the NFL. We'll see how it goes. Yesterday, I thought the running game, although it struggled a bit in the first half, if you look at the stats, Kenny Nwangwu, Myles Gaskin, even Dwayne McBride got in there in the fourth quarter. Ty Chandler, they all had sub or plus 4 yards per carry or more average through that game. So the Vikings running attack was effective yesterday, but whether that will, and we'd like to see that continue in 2024, and we'll see if some of these things, and I think really Aaron Jones being your number one running back is the biggest factor why that running game will be much better this year than 2024. But those other factors, a meaner, tougher offensive line, maybe using the pistol a bit more, could also play into that as well.
I agree. I think it's all going to come together. And what I like to think of the pistol is it's halfway between shotgun and under the center. And it does give the running back a time to step before he does this. Yes, there was running plays out of shotgun. Say, you remember Kirk Cousins getting the ball and then immediately turning it around and handing it to somebody. Well, that somebody had to sit there and wait for it. Yeah. If it's a run game under the pistol, they're not waiting. They're already stepping forward. As soon as it's snapped, he's got it. They're already moving when he went there. And then they'll have more speed. Plus, being back can see a little bit better. I think it's going to be a great improvement, and I look forward to seeing it. I look forward to seeing Mr. Jones during this week with the Browns, and we start seeing film coming out of there, because when they're doing the practice scrimmages, that's going to be the first time we get to see him in full regalia and playing, and I can't wait.
Yeah, and in most sports that I play in, they always tell you you need a split step, like an athletic move before you actually do something to initiate the body and get it into an explosive movement. Well, if you're handing to the running back who's standing still in the shotgun, they are from just a standing still. They are not in. They have not initiated an athletic move before they get the ball. So they're going to be. It's going to take them an extra millisecond or two to get up to top speed and be explosive, which you don't want because the defense is already coming at them.
I agree wholeheartedly. And so hopefully with this, we fix the running game this year and all is good. It's more efficient. I still think we're going to throw a lot, but it's going to be a more efficient running game. And that means hopefully we score more points. Scoring more points gives us a better chance to win. And all is great in the land of the Vikings. But speaking of land, it's now on time for Theme 3. And in this case, this week's in Vikings land.
A lot going on, Dave, as you said at the top of the show. So we're going to touch on some of that, not all of it, but some of it, and some of the comings and goings this week with the Vikings. Speaking of comings and goings, first thing we're going to get to is the trade the Vikings made on Friday, trading away Andrew Booth Jr. and getting Nahshon Wright from the Cowboys. Not a big surprise. I think that Booth is no longer a Viking. It was just, I think, a matter of time when it was going to happen. Even with the tragic passing of Kyrie Jackson, even with Mekhi Blackman blowing out his ACL, Booth was still running with the third team defense. So he was not going to be on the roster when the Vikings broke training camp in a few weeks' time. So they traded him away and they got something for him. What did they get with Wright? Probably not very much. Third round draft pick. He didn't really play at all as a rookie year in 2021. Didn't really play last year in 2023. He did play some in 2022. He had an interception, 23 tackles, 4 passes defensed. He's 6'4", so he's the same height as Kyrie Jackson, and we know the Vikings liked Jackson's length. That's one of the reasons they drafted him. So he's a very tall corner. But Dave, you were talking when the trade was made with me, messaging and saying, here's a situation where 2 guys who weren't going to make their teams have now been swapped, and they've got 2.5 weeks to show that they're worthy of making the team. I don't like Nahshon Wright's chances of making the Vikings, even with our cornerback situation the way it is, just because he's gonna have to pick things up pretty quickly here in 2.5 weeks. And we already saw yesterday and I forgot to mention it, how the cornerbacks and all the shuffling that's going on there, it looked like we didn't know what we were doing. Our pass defense was pretty poor, especially in the first half. And so he's just going to add to this. And I just don't think he's got enough time. He's going to be able to pick up the playbook, the defense, in time to really impress Brian Flores and make a case for the roster spot. But I could be wrong. But trading away Booth it's going to spotlight Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's 2022 draft again and how poor it's been looking. And I think it's fair to mention, though, that when Kwesi Adofo-Mensah drafted Andrew Booth in the second round, that was considered a pretty good pick and a value pick at that time, because Booth was a guy that some draft experts thought was going to be picked in the first round. So for the Vikings to get him early in the second round was considered a pretty good move by them, a good selection by them. And initially in training camp, he stood out. He stood out for being very physical. He looked like he was doing well in corner. Then he got hurt, and he never really seemed to. That stunted his growth. He never found his footing after that. So, that is how things have gone for Andrew Booth Jr. He gets a fresh start with the Cowboys, but you do wonder, with Booth already gone, if the guy who was drafted 10 picks before him at 32, and Lewis Seen, how long he is for the world with the Vikings. When will he be shown the door and the Vikings will be saying, bye, Lewis. Thanks for the memories, as few as they have been. Because, Lewis Scenes, of course, as we've talked about several times, his roster spot seems in serious jeopardy as well.
I agree. Now with the Booth and Wright trade, I think those young gentlemen have 2.5 weeks to convince their team to do enough to stick and at least be held on as, signed on as practice squatters. The change in defensive philosophies may help. The fact that you're going B-flow to Zimmer, Zimmer to B-flow, that how corners play in both of those are different. Zimmer is generally very good with corners, so maybe he'll pull something out of Booth. Maybe B-flow sees something in Wright that'll pull something out of him. But it is like, who was it? And said, I think it was Aaron, it should be a wash. Or Davey may have said it. It's a wash as players. And they both may get fired anyways. They were going to get fired from their respective teams. This gives them that extra little bit of, hey, I got a chance now. And with Lewis Seen, he better take his chance now, or he's going to end up the same way.
And he did play a lot yesterday. Didn't really do anything of note, but he's getting his chance.
Mm-hmm. But it's, hey, I wish Booth all the luck in the world. He didn't make it for us. Maybe he can make it down in Dallas.
Yeah, never wish a former Viking that things go poorly for him if he moves on somewhere else. Hope that he can turn his career around and make something of it, because he was a guy that had a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and maybe Zim can work his magic. Who knows?
That's right. Former defensive back coach.
Mm-hmm. All right, that brings us to the next bit of news in Vikings land.
This is better news, at least potentially. In that Saturday, we saw Jacina Anderson from, I think was the first to report on it, but that Stephon Gilmore is visiting with the Vikings tomorrow.
Today?
And Sunday. Was it today? I thought it was Monday.
Well, he's flying in today.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Coughing a bit there. But yes.
It's got you all choked up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think with Gilmore, this is something I was hoping the Vikings would do 2 weeks ago, would bring him in. Now, maybe Gilmore wasn't really interested in coming in 2 weeks, but he's coming now. And this makes a lot of sense for the Vikings because we know their cornerback room has been hit with injuries and the passing of Kyrie Jackson. They've brought in a whole bunch of new guys that don't really know what they're doing and we're not really sure of their talent level isn't really all that encouraging either in some cases. And so you bring Gilmore, if he does end up signing with us, you can stick him on the outside with Shaq Griffin when he gets healthy. And then you've got Byron Murphy Jr. in the slot, in the nickel where he really belongs. Those are three cornerbacks. I think that if they play like they've, particularly Griffin and Gilmore, if they play like they have in the past, even the recent past, that's a cornerback room that could function pretty well and be a real asset to the Vikings defense. So there's that. Certainly Gilmore's got a better resume than anybody else on the Vikings squad, even Shaq Griffin. So even at 34, I'm willing to see what he has. The other thing is depth-wise, it would certainly help because if injuries happen, if Griffin were to get hurt during the season and miss a bit of time, or Murphy does, he did last year, the last couple of games, then you do, instead of having to go with a Caleb Evans or Duke Shelley or Dwight McLaughlin, you can go with Gilmore, and you've got Gilmore or Murphy or Gilmore or Griffin, and you use one of your lower guys on the depth chart to be the third guy going in there. So depth-wise, it really helps. If they could bring Griffin in there, we will see how things go, whether the Vikings feel this is the right fit for them and whether Gilmore feels that the Vikings are the right fit for him. I'm hoping that they can come to an agreement and that Gilmore becomes a Viking here quickly. salary shouldn't be an issue because the Vikings have, I think, $16.8 million in cap space right now. So they have the cap space to sign Gilmore to a 1-year deal that would be appropriate for a player of his stature. Maybe it also helps that he's got Brian Flores and Gilmore are very familiar with one another. Flores was the linebackers coach and de facto defensive coordinator during Gilmore's time in New England. And hopefully they
made the Pro Bowl during that time period.
And so I've not seen Flores mention any Gilmore at all, probably because he doesn't want to take the focus off of the players that he already has. So he's not going to speculate on that. But I feel that they must have a pretty cordial relationship, or else Gilmore wouldn't be even visiting the Vikings in that case. So a promising development there, and I hope that it leads to Gilmore being added to the roster, because we could use some more cornerback help, as we saw on yesterday.
Yes, we do. That brings us to the next little bit. News.
Extensions. Mark Wilf met with the media this week, and he got asked about when are you going to sign Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah? When are you going to extend them, or are you going to extend them? They're going into their third year of a 4-year deal that they both signed when they joined the Vikings in January of 2022. And Mark Wilf said, basically he said that nothing's going to get done during the season. Right now, we're going to deal with that after the season. And I think that's the right move, because I don't think that either Kevin O'Connell or Kwesi Adofo-Mensah have done enough to earn an extension at this point. That doesn't mean that I'm down on these guys, though, in case anybody thinks that I am. They have done some good things during their time with the Vikings. Looking at Kevin O'Connell, really love the culture that he's built with the Vikings in a short time. It's very player friendly. The players seem to really enjoy it. It's a 180 from Mike Zimmer. Don't want to beat on Zimmer too much, because I did like Zimmer quite a bit while he was there. So he's done that. I think that he has shown himself to be like a very calm, steady presence during in the chaos that is an NFL season. I like him as our head coach. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, I like you look at how he's cleaned up our salary cap situation in just 3 offseason. We are now going to be flush with salary cap space. I really like the way he's attacked free agency in his 3 seasons, and the guys he's gone after, and also the amount of money and years he's committed to those guys. I think he's not saddled us with contracts that will hurt us 3 or 4 years down the road. So I think, financially and how he's handled free agency with the resources he had, he's done well there. Of course, the drafts have been very spotty, pretty poor at this point in time. And we know that drafts are the lifeblood of any NFL franchise. If you want to consistently be a great team, you've got to draft well. So he's got to get better at that, even though the book is still not closed on any of his drafts. And for the 2024 draft, it hasn't even really started. But I think that there's some questions there. I need to see more from him too. But I think if you're the Wilfs, what's going to happen is that you'll see how things go this season. If they like the direction that the Vikings are headed with both of these guys, then I think that they kind of look at extending them for a 2-year period. So that will give both of them a bit more job security, but it won't commit too many years and too many dollars to both of them that the Wilfs aren't comfortable with, in case they have to make a change in 2025 or 2026 and make a replacement. And also with Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, one of the things that's going to factor into, I think, the Wilfs and how they feel, what state the team is at with these 2 guys running it, is that the J.J. McCarthy situation, their Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell's futures are really hinge and are on the development of that kid. And if he turns into the franchise quarterback, then both of those guys, Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, probably will be our GM and head coach for as long as they want to be. But if it doesn't go well, they probably will be fired in a couple of years. So I think the Wilfs would want to see how the development of JJ McCarthy has gone this year too before they would commit to extending both of those gentlemen. So I don't think this was an issue for Kevin O'Connell. He said, I got too much to focus on as a head coach to worry about my contract at this point. And but it's a talking point, and I think the way the Wilfs are handling it is the right way to do it.
I agree, and I think it all depends. Kevin O'Connell was the quickest to 20 some odd wins in the history of the team. I think Kwesi, you're right. I think especially his first draft was horrible, but he has done well with contracts, and he has done well with free agents and trades so far. Roughly, Hawkinson, you think of that. This, I think it's going to all depend how this season goes. If it goes well, even if Sam Darnold's playing, but how they're watching, JJ mature and get polished, and then JJ comes in, and let's see how, are we competitive when we're, only expected to win 6.5 games or whatever Vegas has us at? Are we going to be competing for the division? I think if we're there at that point, I think that this is going to be a no-brainer, and they'll get extensions. Now, whether it's 2 years or more, I don't know. It depends how it all looks. If JJ looks the real deal and everything's looking peachy and we're, competing for the division, you may see longer extension than that. But we'll see.
We will. It'll. Jonathan mentioned that the Wilfs will have to judge the rate of improvement of the franchise, and whether they're satisfied with that rate of improvement. And the Wilfs have said Super Bowl is the ultimate goal, as it is for every team. So they've got to determine whether we're headed in the right direction, where eventually, and not in the too distant future, the Vikings are winning a Super Bowl with Kevin O'Connell as the head coach and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah as its general manager.
Exactly. Now, let's move on to the next bit. The Vikings released their notional, and I call it notional, not exactly accurate depth chart this last week.
Makes you wonder why they release it if it's not, if it's notional.
Because they release it because it's required by the NFL. That's why.
Good to know. Still, it's always this is something that as fans that we wait for every year, is when that first depth chart goes out, so that we can kind of have an idea of where we think certain players or all the players stand, is how the Vikings are viewing it. And looking at that notional depth chart, I didn't really see a whole lot of surprises. Dave, you might disagree with me, but the first thing of note was that JJ McCarthy and Nick Mullins are listed right now as co-backups. That feels like just a formality at this point. JJ McCarthy's been running with the twos entire training camp. Nick Mullins did not play yesterday. JJ McCarthy played pretty much 2 full quarters. JJ McCarthy is at least the backup right now for the Vikings. So I think that's pretty clear. One of the listings that did surprise me was that Robert Tonyan is listed as co-starter with TJ Hawkinson at the moment. Hawkinson, of course, is on the physically unable to perform list, so he's not going to be playing until he gets taken off that list, and we don't think that's going to happen until maybe week 5 of the NFL season, but hopefully sooner. But Tonyan's been out for over a week with back spasms. He didn't play yesterday. Judd Zulgad says that he has 0 chance of making the squad. I think that's a pretty bold statement from Judd, but
I'm curious what Judd knows, because Judd's generally correct. When he comes out that emphatic, he knows something. And I don't know.
We do know that it's a pretty full tight end room right now. I mean, Hawkinson is going to be coming back, and he's going to play all the time. Josh Oliver is your number 2 guy, and we know he's not going anywhere, and he's going to play 30 to 40% of the offensive snaps, maybe more if they run the ball more. And then Johnny Munt, the best third tight end in the NFL, according to Kevin O'Connell. And then you got Nick Muse, who keeps on hearing good things.
Yesterday.
made a real nice catch yesterday off a laser from JJ McCarthy. And I mean, Muse is something to keep in mind with him is that he was a draft pick of Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, and he is younger than Robert Tonyan. So the Vikings, they've got a younger guy who's still developing, and also somebody that they drafted. They might like to keep him more than Robert Tonyan, who they brought in as a free agent. And then even N'Keal Harry, I don't think he's got a roster spot, but hey, he didn't look that bad yesterday either. Made a really nice catch. Is as an intriguing guy to have as a tight end. Maybe ends up being stashed on the practice squad, but I don't know where Tonyan, where he really fits with the team right now. So interesting though that he's up there as a starting tight end at this point, because that is not what we've been hearing. The only other thing that was kind of noticed was on the offensive line. Dalton Risner is listed as the backup right guard behind Ed Ingram. Last year, he was the last 11 games of the season? He was our starting left guard, but they've got him as the backup right guard right now. And he didn't play yesterday, and we did not hear there wasn't an injury issue.
No, I'd heard at the last minute he was injured, but they haven't said what and how and why. And I joked that he pulled his groin or something.
Yeah. Now we had been talked about the past where Risner, you could flip him from left to right or right to left and make him maybe a swing guard, but they've got Michael Juergens as the backup left guard right now and him as the backup right guard. So, I found that interesting. I would have thought Risner would be your backup left guard, but that's not the case. And maybe that means Ed Ingram's got to watch over his shoulder a bit at the right guard, because we know he's had his struggles at times, not at times, a lot of the times as our right guard in 2 seasons. So maybe the Vikings feel that he's the one that needs to be pushed more than Blake Brandel does. But just, other than that, didn't really see anything earth shattering on the depth chart. But Dave, I don't know if anything caught your eye of what was listed there.
Nothing that stood out. Not that I really care, because I know this is just a academic exercise by the people in the building with no input by KOC, because he doesn't care. It's not required for him to put out an accurate one. It's only required that the team puts out one by the NFL, and we go through this every single season. And I don't see anything, I don't like the way they did it where you had 2 people in one spot or something like that. I'd rather have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, type deal when you have more players, but it is what it is. I do want to go back and address Charlie Hustle. How are we going to gain draft capital if we have to cut people? Well, you don't want to keep dregs on the team if they can't produce. And if they turn out to be busts, yes, it would be nice to trade them away and get a, low round 7, 6 rounder for them. But that you got to have 2 teams that are willing to do that, and that doesn't always happen. So you tend to cut bait and let it go and pay whatever money you have left over, and you go on from there. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. Would I like to get them traded? Yes. Would I like them to go off if, and do it? Fine. But it's better than holding them on and them taking up space that somebody productive could be there. Now, and if they're that bad, you're not going to get anything in the way of a comp pick down the road anyways. Even if you let them play out their contract and leave, it's not going to happen because they're not that good. So we'll see. It's a shame that they aren't, but that's Kwesi learning. That's Kwesi on the first draft. Kwesi on the first draft with people in there from Rick Spielman. It is what it is. So we move on, get better. But yes, I'd like more draft picks. Maybe if Roger Goodell, we could slip him a century note and have him sprinkle a couple more in there. We'd be good to go. Well, folks, that's it. That's today's show. You guys have absolutely rocked in the comments today. Appreciate it very much. Any last words there, Darren?
Just a bit about The Vikings will play next Saturday. They travel to Cleveland. They're doing some joint practices with that, and really excited to see how Darnold and McCarthy, how the playing time is divvied up between them. Does Darnold play 2 or 3 series this time instead of just the one? Does he play at all? How much does McCarthy get? Do they play Mullins a bit or just go with Hall, McCarthy, and Darnold again? And when McCarthy gets in there in particular, how does he do against the Browns defense, depending on who's in there, which we know was very, very good last year. That goes for Sam Darnold as well. In the first preseason game, the Browns held out almost all of their key guys on defense. So even though the Packers won handedly in that one, they weren't really facing the real Cleveland defense. But the Vikings will be facing the real Cleveland defense, at least in the practices. Maybe not so much in the game.
Like all of these games after a joint practice, I suspect we're not going to see the starters in the actual game. I think next week we may see, next Saturday, some more JJ, some Nick Mullins, and more Darren Hall. But I don't expect to see Sam Darnold on the field from here on out until we start the season. And
I guess yesterday, Kevin O'Connell, even though he told us he was going to do it, the Vikings under Kevin O'Connell went against the way they've approached preseason games the previous 2 years, and that a lot of our starters who will be starting on September 8th were in the game, at least for one series yesterday, except for a few of them, like Harrison Smith, Justin Jefferson didn't play, but he gave him a bit of a run. And so Kevin O'Connell's decided that I don't know how much of a difference one series made, but he's trying to get the team a little bit more ready to go when it's go time on September 8th.
And I hope it works. It should. But I want to agree with Doc Proto. It doesn't matter if it's a preseason game. A win makes you feel better, and this weekend has made us feel a lot better.
It does.
And with that, I want everybody out there to stay safe, stay sound, enjoy good friends, good food, and, of course, good beverage. And what do we say, Darren?
We say, SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!